Today, we've got big news. Nat Turner is coming on the show to tell us about PSA's current plans with their reopening and what the future is likely to hold. My name is Jeff Wilson. By day, I invest in tech companies, and at night, I invest in sports cards. Join me on my journey to profit from the hobby we all love. Sports card investors, and welcome to a really big episode because we're going to hear some great stuff from Nat Turner. We're going to learn about PSA's plans and what to expect July 1st and in the future from PSA in terms of reopening and what pricing could look like, and whatever details he can give us, we're going to get as many details as we can right now. And of course, this episode of Sports Card Investor is brought to you by eBay, your number one spot for cards and collectibles. With the largest inventory of sports cards from basketball to soccer and buyers from all over the globe, eBay is the leading place to buy, sell, and invest your cards. Okay, this interview you are about to hear, these are just some of the short cut up highlights of a longer interview that I did with Nat. And it may be worth your time to listen to the full interview because the full interview is over an hour long. And not only do I talk to Nat in depth about all of PSA's plans, but I also spend the first part of the interview talking to him about his business and entrepreneurial background and how somebody gets to the point where they can acquire PSA in the first place. How somebody accumulates that type of wealth and that type of business acumen to be able to acquire PSA. So if you're curious about hearing Nat's backstory and how he got to where he is and what business advice he may have for you and other entrepreneurs out there, then you want to hear the full interview. And the full interview is on our sister YouTube channel called The Owner's Suite by Sports Card Investor. So if you want to hear the full interview, then pause this one right now and go over to the channel called The Owner's Suite by Sports Card Investor. The full interview is there. Also, it's on our podcast, The Owner's Suite by Sports Card Investor podcast. And please subscribe to those because every single week we're putting out new long format interviews with huge influential people in the sports card hobby and NFTs and rare collectibles and fantasy sports and all kinds of really interesting fields. So subscribe to the Owner's Suite to get those interviews. Go there now to hear Nat's full interview. Or if you just want to hear some of the highlights, then we're going to play them for you right now. Welcome Nat Turner to Sports Card Investor. I know the sports card community is excited to have you at the helm, and we're going to talk a little bit about what that means here in just a minute and the current going-ons at PSA. One more question. So you a few minutes ago said that one of the things that had you discouraged about sports cards before this PSA journey began was the fact that there was a lot of investors that have kind of come into the market. You've got funds starting, you've got people who are in it for the money and big investment. And I will own up to the fact that certainly my channel covers a lot of that aspect of sports cards and the dollar and cents movement and attracts those people. Now, myself personally, I am both a big investor in sports cards and a big collector of sports cards, and I try to emphasize both on the channel. And I have seen on the positive, I have seen a number of people, many people who have come in from the investment side, but have actually kind of fallen in love with the collecting side as well. And so they've almost moved somewhat from investor to collector. And I think that even myself, I've done some of that too. But I'm curious, the interesting juxtaposition there is that it's a lot of that crowd that has fueled the growth of PSA over the course of the last couple of years, and probably, I would imagine, is integral to the continued growth of PSA and the continued growth of the hobby. Or do you not see it that way? Do you think the investor crowd it continues to be unhealthy for the hobby and PSA?
Yeah, again, I don't ever think it was unhealthy. I think it was just like a personal belief, or as a collector, I was getting outbid on cards that I really wanted from people I knew didn't care about the card. So it was more just like the PMG green set that I'm after, like 2 or 3 times, like common players that truly I know because a couple of them reached out to me a day later, hey, I'll sell this to you for $5,000 more than I just paid for it. So it was that kind of stuff. It wasn't the ruining the hobby, but I would say from a collector perspective, collector's universe, it's in our name. We support collectors. That's what we're about. And it's totally fine if you want to go after cards because it's a good investment. I mean, look, I'm not bummed that my cards are worth more than they were before. I mean, that's awesome. I love that. But that's not why I'm doing it. And, we certainly want to support them, but our primary focus, is always going to be on folks that collect cards for, the hobby, for the passion. I don't think you're going to see us, doing things like, lending, giving credit lines for people to buy cards and that sort of thing, that kind of stimulates the investor side of it. We're truly, I think we do have an opportunity and should facilitate more transactions, authenticate, trusted transactions so collectors can buy the things they want and know they're getting what they want and make sure it's authenticated. But, there's a line there for us that we don't want to cross, on the investor side of things. But like I said, I love the fact that they're in the hobby. I think it just needs to be a healthy balance. Certain cards, you see it. I think the investors who don't understand cards, they don't realize the population of certain cards that they run up. And then, we see it at PSA when there's a rush of people trying to get those cards graded. They're yelling at me on Instagram, like, why isn't my card graded? The prices are going down. I'm like, look, you're not the only one, 40,000 other people also submitted a bunch of Zion rookie cards. So yeah, it's just a really funny ecosystem now. But I think overall it's very healthy. I mean, in the last 6 months especially, I think, you've seen a rebalancing of, the folks that are in it for the long term are still in it. And the folks that maybe, saw a crypto style, store of value buzz, 6 months ago, maybe aren't in it anymore. But that's okay. I think they still, maybe they come back, they dip their toes in. I've seen that for the last 20 years. I mean, in 2010, you saw this huge run up in Jordan prices. It's the same damn thing. Just, history's repeating itself.
One thing that everyone's curious about, you made the reference to, people, their cards sitting at PSA. And of course, I've heard a lot of people say, oh my gosh, when I sent my cards to PSA, they were worth a lot more than they are today. What is the backlog like? How are you guys doing on catching up? When do you feel like you're going to be at a good point?
Yeah, I mean, we're making a dent every day. I mean, we're still in suspended. I mean, you can't send new cards in unless it's a pretty high service level. The primary reason was that we had to catch up on order entry. Like, we truly didn't, we weren't able to open all the boxes that we received. The demand was so high in Q1. We had a power surge of demand, as I've referred to it in early March, where on a single day, we received, 30x our ability to service the demand on a single day. And that's just no company in the world can flex. We didn't have enough people to open the boxes and so on. So the primary reason we suspended was to catch up on that, because it's just not okay to not be able to tell someone, hey, your box is here, your cards are safe, we've itemized them, so on and so forth. So we're caught up there, which is great on order entry. On the actual backlog, I mean, it's going to be a process. I mean, we're hiring as many people as we can. We're implementing technology. We're going to be living with a pretty high backlog probably for at least a year. It's just, unless we decrease quality, which we're never going to do. Like, that is, as a collector, I'm very happy to be involved here, because God forbid a PE firm, owns PSA. They say, hey, just grade twice as many cards per day. What's the big deal? Just slap an 8 or 9 or a 10 on each one. Who cares? That's not how we roll. We're taking just as seriously as we ever did. And so the grading team, is under no additional, quotas or anything like that to catch up. They have to take their time doing it at the way they did before. So it's going to take us a while to get through. We're very cautious on reopening, to make sure we don't have the same problem we did in March. As the avalanche of cards we received, we don't want that to happen again. So the team is working through kind of what the right way to reopen is as far as new submissions. It's going to be a balance where we have to continue to eat into the backlog. So in other words, we're not going to be able to support the same number of cards that we received in years prior, because we need to reserve some of our capacity for grading for what we have already in the building.
And when you first put out the announcement about the shutdown, I believe there was, as part of that announcement, there was a hope that by July 1st, some, if not all, levels of service would be able to be restored. We're on the precipice of July 1st now. How are things looking in that regard?
We're going to reopen some service levels for sure. It's not going to be what it is today. I think we're trying to strike the balance, as I alluded to, of what's the balance that allows us to receive. The demand is such that we receive fewer cards than we actually can grade, so that we can use some of that capacity for the backlog on an ongoing basis. For months on end, we were receiving multiples the number of cards per day than we could actually grade.
Right.
And that's just, and then, like I said, it surged in March, and we just said, we threw our hands up and like, this isn't, it's not okay anymore. So we're going to do it through a combination of limiting service levels, but also through pricing, which we've already done. We raised pricing in March. Our competitors did the exact same thing. It's the cleanest way to kind of increase and decrease incoming demand. I don't know the specifics of what it'll be come July. It actually is a few weeks away still. So we still have some, things to work through. Our biggest thing is we don't want to repeat our mistake that we made in March. So. Right.
So do you think, and I know we got a little bit of time here before, you guys have to make an official decision, but do you think on July 1st, there will be some additional levels of service opened, perhaps at a higher price is what you're alluding to?
I'm not sure. We will have additional service levels open than what they're today. Whether or not they're at the same price from what they were in March, TBD.
Okay, so additional service levels will open July 1st.
And at lower than our current levels, 300, they'll be cheaper than that.
Okay, additional service levels will open, not all service levels, but
maybe. I'm not sure.
Okay,
yeah, I would tell you if I knew. We're still working it through. We're just being very cautious on what the demand will be. We're actually surveying our customers right now, by the way, to get some intel and kind of, hey, if we introduced at these levels, what would you send in, and so on. So,
were you terrified when you decided to shut down on March 30th? It was perhaps not coincidentally, I think the day before Prison Basketball released.
Yeah, I know. That was not planned.
That was not planned. I thought that was a very intentional maneuver because you were worried that you were about to get flooded with LaMelo Ball cards.
No, it had nothing to do with that. We received like 5,000 FedEx packages on a single day.
Yeah.
I forget the exact day. It was on a Monday, but no, that was why we shut down, because we were terrified of the box. We didn't have physical storage for these boxes, as an example. The postal service in Southern California broke because of so that was why we shut down. I was actually relieved. I remember Steve and Joe called me and they were like, hey, we need to make the tough call here, and do you object? I was like, absolutely not, go for it. And it was a big relief. And I'll tell you, the biggest relief was, I got a lot of pretty nasty messages when we raised prices a couple weeks prior to that, is what it is. I didn't get any negative. In fact, most people sent me nice, not that I run the business based on, my direct messages, but, a lot of people were like, hey, that was a really important move. Great. Love to see it. Blah, blah. I think people respected it. It was a tough call because, we like I said before, imagine as a public company, you literally, turning away people begging to give you money, but we had to do it. It was just so obvious. In many ways, I regret we didn't do it sooner, but,
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and I can only imagine how difficult of a decision that must have been to make. But
for me, it wasn't hard because I didn't make it.
Sure. I imagine it was hard for them because
first time in history they've done that.
Sure, absolutely.
The biggest bummer for me, honestly, is the collectors, the folks that are doing sets. Because I'm one of them. I have thousands of cards backing up, and there are some of them in this room that I am not going to send in unless it's $20 or so service level or under. And
but will we ever see that again?
Absolutely. We will get there. Okay. I am not going to sit around and let these cards pile up ungraded on my own. So, look, I'm a true collector. I want that back just as much as anyone. That's what kills me the most, is that we truly, we open at $20, or $10, we'll get crushed. And
yeah, for sure. Are people grading the wrong type of cards? Is the base cards, right? Are people grading the wrong types of cards, and is that part of the problem?
We're never going to judge, what people, should or shouldn't grade. We did receive a crap ton of what you would call base cards, or what I would call base cards. a lot of Prism, a lot of 80s stuff. But look, people want to grade what they want to grade. I think the tough part for us are the speculators who send in 100 cards at when the rates are as low as they were. It's profitable to send in 100 1984 Fleer or Topps baseball cards, and if a couple of them hit tens, you made your money. But again, a lot of collectors do that. I do that too, because I want to complete those sets in particular grades, and all in PSA holders. And so it's not for us to judge. But the truth is, at the price level, all I can say is the demand was so high for base cards, for high end. I mean, it was just untenable. So
yeah, for sure. You had talked earlier about that Jordan 86 Fleer PSA 10, and about how an email went out internally a couple weeks ago where it just another 10 had been graded. And I imagine that's
one of the graders pinged me and said, how cool is this? Check it out.
So is it tougher to get a 10 grade on that card today than it would have been had somebody submitted that card 5 or 10 years ago?
I don't believe so. I mean, I get asked this question all the time. I mean, our grading team is really good at their job. There's been no, change in policy or, hey, let's, the fact that people think we're managing population is just, to me, it's kind of funny at this point, because there's just not possible. Like, why would we do that? But it's just, I think a lot of it's perception. I think the one thing we have seen a lot of new submitters and a lot of cards that frankly shouldn't be graded, not because of the card itself, but because of the condition. And then a lot of the modern cards are frankly a lot lower quality than they used to be, mainly with centering and surface defects. Mm-hmm. But as it relates to the Jordan, I mean, I personally don't think so. The grading team hasn't, changed in any way. I mean, in theory, you could look back, over a long period of time, because there are different people in the room. But at the end of the day, it is a human opinion. They're looking at a card and rendering an opinion. But we've trained, our team goes through rigorous training. Every new hire goes through, it's pretty hard to be a grader at PSA, to get the job and also to keep the job. So, I think we're just getting really good at, and consistent, and making sure we're as accurate as possible.
Do you think there's a psychological burden on the grader? Even if the training's consistent and the process is consistent, could maybe psychologically they just be aware of, holy heck, this is a massive card, it's super valuable, and therefore I really have to scrutinize it and be more tough on it than maybe I would have been 10 years ago when this card wasn't nearly as valuable as it is today?
Well, no, I mean, look, I think a big reason why PSA is what it is, and the most trusted grading authority, in my opinion, I don't know if that's, I think hopefully is true, is because of how seriously we take cards like that. I mean, for years, way predating my involvement, way predating my, getting cards graded with PSA, they have multiple people review every card. So, a Jordan Fleer, like there's no situation where some junior grader's looking at that card and, that card is looked at by multiple people to make sure it's accurate. And that's been the case for a long time. But yes, look, to be clear, we do, I would say, we want to get it right on high-end cards. Like, we're not, mainly in authenticity, we're not that worried about a, 2020 second year Zion base Prism card being faked. I mean, whoever wants to fake that card, like that's like they probably have bigger problems. But, the high-end cards are more likely to be faked and trimmed because it's more profitable. And so the biggest reason why we spend more time on the higher-end cards is because I would say the risk of some issue is much higher. And because, PSA, we stand behind our grades. I mean, we buy back cards, pretty regularly if they don't meet the grade that we rendered, or if they turn out to be fake or trimmed that we missed. And we can see we made a mistake. And so that's a big reason why we do that.
Yeah. And that's maybe something people don't know about, but that's actually, why don't you just explain that a little bit more for the audience who may not know about PSA's policy in that area?
Yeah, so we stand behind the label. So if you send in, or if you buy a card, let's say on eBay, and it's a 10, and let's say it has an obvious defect or an alteration that we should have caught, you can send it back to us, and we confirm that. We'll buy the card back, or we'll give you the difference. If it drops to an 8, we'll give you the difference in market value. And that's a really big deal. We don't do that. A key difference there, which people don't understand, is you're not eligible if you're the original submitter. So if you send us a trim card and we miss it, and you say, "Hey, PSA, this card's trim." And by the way, this happening every day. Someone tries to get us to do. We're like, "Hey, you're the original submitter. Like, this is your problem, not ours." It is. We should have caught it, and we learned from that experience. But it's not. That's not a business model for people. So, and again, it happens every day. Someone tries, and so. So we have that policy, but again, it happens on a weekly basis. There's a situation where by the way, I do it. I see it on eBay. I'm like, how's that card at 10? It's off centered, and I'll send it to our team. This is how seriously we take it. We're taking money out of our pockets. Like this happened the other day with the 96 96 regular base Topps Kobe, which was a 10. It's badly off centered. Someone DM'd me about it. I'm like, yeah, totally shouldn't be a 10. I'm not a grader. But I said, hey, let's get the card back and regrade it. Sure enough, wasn't a 10, and we compensated the owner. So we want the cards off the market that we screwed up.
Really fascinating. That's really cool to hear. Yeah, that's wild. So you just talked about, trimming. Obviously that's been going on for a long time. People have attempted that. And I know that's a cat and mouse game that you guys have had to police against for a very, very long time. More recently, there's been some, concern across social and that type of thing about like fake slabs. And is that a concern for you guys? How seriously is PSA taking that?
Very seriously. So we have a fraud team that pretty much we're on this. People send it to me, and usually we've already seen it and have sent cease and desist letters or alerted the authorities. We have an active line with multiple authorities that we just every time we see something, we send it to them. The trick is if someone, says like, in the eBay listing, like this is not, we're not this, it's a proxy, they're very clear that it's fake. They're not doing something illegal at that point. They're infringing on us. And so we're going to chase them, but we're not the cops. Like we can't, shut them down. So it's hard for us. There's a line there that we can only do so much, which is I was alluding to before. So we have a lot of kind of covert and non-covert security features in our labels, in our slabs, that we can tell better than anybody if a slab is real. So I do think it's a responsibility of ours to work more closely with auction houses and with eBay and others to ensure authenticity of slabs. It is becoming a pretty big issue. And we can tell, like I said, a slab, you cannot replicate our slab perfectly. It's just impossible based on the amount of security we have into it. And so again, there's things that no one knows about that are in that slab that we can run a check on. And then we're not going to tell anybody because then they could potentially fake it or try to. And so I think there's an opportunity for PSA to enable the hobby better, in the transaction layer, to make that more trusted. And we're looking into a bunch of ideas there. But it's a huge issue. Weekly, we're shutting someone down.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you guys have a team on it. It's definitely one of the scary things about the hobby for both collectors and investors that, that kind of thing could happen. So I'm glad you guys are on it for sure. Nat, you've been super generous with your time, and so we're gonna wrap, but I want to get you out of here on this. One final question for you. I'd just like to know where you think the sports card market is going to be 5-10 years from now. What do you think, if you could look 5 years in the future, how do you think things are going to look compared to how they look today?
I'm very bullish, obviously. I think you're going to see a lot of digital content breaking, a lot of direct to consumer, Topps and Panini and all the card companies hopefully are non-exclusive at that point, meaning Topps can produce basketball cards and Panini can produce baseball cards. I'd love to see more innovation in cards, getting back to kind of the golden years, in my opinion, of the 90s and early 2000s. I would love to, I think we're seeing a ton of kids enter the hobby. I think you're going to see a lot of, I personally think, innovation with, the buying and selling process. You're seeing a lot of VC funded startups for the first time ever, and get in the card game, which I think is great. From box breaking to transaction layers to vaulting to insurance to whatever. And that's great. I think you're going to see infrastructure build out that gives people confidence. Like, when you buy that Jordan Flair rookie card, you know it's real, first of all, and also you feel secured and protected, and maybe it's vaulted, maybe it's insured, maybe it's fractionalized, whatever the hell you want to do. You have that infrastructure at your fingertips. So I think there's a lot of good stuff happening. I'm, slightly nervous about, bad actors. I'm not I am, I think it's on us. I view it as my responsibility too, to protect the hobby from PSA's perspective as much as we can. We're not the only grading company, and we're going to do our part. As prices continue to go up, it's becoming even more lucrative for scammers to make money off of it. So everyone has to stay extremely vigilant on, what they buy is real, and work with a grading company that you trust and an auction house that you trust. But assuming those things continue, we stay one step ahead of those scammers. The next 5 years are going to be awesome. The biggest thing, honestly, is basketball, baseball needs to go non-exclusive with card companies. I think people don't realize how freaking cool that'll be for the hobby. All that stuff behind you, the Prism, like the Panini stuff, like it's good, but like it's nothing like it used to be. Panini, in my opinion. So.
It'll be fun. Hopefully we get there. It'll be fun to see the innovation that occurs. I'm personally really excited about one of the reasons why I am so optimistic about the sports card market, and I talk about it frequently, is one of the exact reasons you just hit on, the fact that there is investment activity, there's VC activity, there's startups, there's technology that's coming into play. Companies are trying to really do innovative things. And as money's flowing into the hobby, not just from a buying card standpoint, but really more importantly, from fueling new companies that can then fuel the hobby's growth in the future and take the hobby in new directions. I think it's extremely exciting, and I think it's a great sign for where things are going to be down the road. So I'm very happy to hear that optimism from you, and hopefully 5 years from now we'll have seen all of that. Hopefully people will be watching this video back 5 years from now, and we'll have seen a lot of that innovation come to life and the hobby be in a really strong, healthy position. All right, guys, what an awesome interview. And if you want to hear more, if you want to hear the full uncut version of that interview, as well as all of Nat's business backstory, then you've got to listen to the interview on the Owner's Suite channel. Go to the Owner's Suite by Sports Card Investor on YouTube or on your podcast player. That's where you can hear the extended cut of this interview with a whole lot of additional information beyond what you just heard. That again is called the Owner's Suite by Sports Card Investor. Go there now and subscribe to that channel so you get interviews like this one in the future. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you watching. See you again soon with our next episode.